wonderful people of the internet. Today I am going to be reviewing the Netflix show The Witcher, which I have recently been watching and I really love it. So I'm quite excited to be talking about it. I've got a fair few things to say and I'm going to try and communicate them as concisely as possible, because you may know that I tried doing this last Sunday and couldn't upload the video because it was 55 minutes of me talking about nothing really in particular. So we're going to try and keep this quick and concise and around the 10-minute margin. 30 minutes later? Yeah, definitely a 10-minute margin. Just so that I don't waste too much of your time and so that I can clearly communicate what I'm trying to say without too much fluff around the edges. So let's get started. Okay, so The Witcher is about a man, well, more specifically, a witcher, called Geralt of Rivia. Now, a witcher is a human who has been genetically mutated so that they can hunt monsters. Now, this is set in a fantasy world where monsters were released by some historic event, I believe called the Conjunction of the Spheres. I'm a bit fuzzy on this, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but that either that created monsters or monsters were created by people to hunt things down. I honestly can't clearly say because it was exposition that I've only recently heard and I didn't fully comprehend it. But there are monsters, in short, and there are witches to fight them. Now, witches live on the outskirts of society. They're shunned by their fellow man because they're mutants who apparently don't feel emotion and, you know, just kill monsters, and that's their only importance, right? So this is about a witcher called Geralt, who is, through a series of events involving different people who he comes to know, how he is roped into the current conflict of this fantasy world, and the sort of things that a witcher wouldn't usually get involved in. So just as a basic premise, this is really interesting because at least I haven't really come across or heard of many fantasy series that have a character like that, you know, a genetically mutated social outcast monster hunter. Now, mercenaries and social outcasts are quite common for adult fantasy, I think. However, the concept of a witcher is just kind of a bit different, and that's exciting immediately. But while I'm on the subject of this being different, this series as well, because it's based on a series of books by a guy whose name I'm definitely going to get wrong. I'm going to take a wild guess and say it's Andrzej Sapkowski. Sapkowski, I think. But I believe he is Polish, so some of the lore, the mythology in this book is inspired by Polish mythology rather than sort of Western British, like Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, who all draw inspiration from that. So I'm not familiar with Polish folklore, so I can't say how massively it's influenced this, but it definitely feels different to a lot of what I've experienced before. Admittedly, not very much, but it did still feel different, so that's quite fun. Okay, so now you've got the basic premise, I will be sinking my teeth first into what I liked about this show, and it's a lot, so this will take up the majority of the video. I've even got a notepad for me to talk about this with. So the first thing that I put that I liked is the acting, and this is definitely the least controversial thing that I can say, because this show is extremely controversial among fans. People either love it and say it's a masterpiece, or hate it and say it's rubbish. I'm basically in the masterpiece division, but I guess I can see why some people wouldn't like it. Plus, I haven't played the video games or read the books, despite having started The Last Wish now. So I can't comment on how good this is as an adaptation, really. So I'm sure once I read them and hopefully eventually play them, maybe I'll have different thoughts. But just for now, I think it's pretty darn good. So, as I was saying, least controversially, the acting. This cast put their all into this. Even the side characters were fantastic. So I'm gonna name the people of note, although there are many more people who were fantastic in this show. I did search someone up and have forgot their name already. That's bad. Okay, I'll leave their name on the screen if I get it wrong. But first up, we have Henry Cavill as Geralt the Witcher. So Henry Cavill has played Superman in the past, and I heard that a lot of people were skeptical about how he would achieve this character when the show was first announced and him being Geralt. Luckily though, Henry Cavill turns out to be a massive nerd who has played the games loads and loves the books. So out of the whole cast, I believe he knew the most about the story, and you can definitely see his passion shine through in Geralt's part, and in my opinion, he smashes that out the park. Now, he is playing the typical badass fighter type, and I suppose it could be pretty easy to slip into the realms of unbelievable or comical with that part, but he manages to walk the fine line while keeping it still badass and cool, but not making it really grounded either. So it's impressive the balance he achieves. Now, one of the things that he is famous for, and sort of a meme in itself, is a scene that I will play instead of saying it myself, is just when he goes,
"Fuck."
It's a running joke throughout the series, and I just find it so funny. Now, I've experienced mainly young adult oriented fantasy like Lord of the Rings. In fact, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter are my only real... I lie. I've read Philip, His Dark Materials and some at Discworld, but Discworld isn't young adult really, but His Dark Materials, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings is adult, but it's not necessarily unsuitable for young adults, I guess. So I've never really experienced adult fantasy properly, although I have read a Game of Thrones, only the first one though, because my parents took it off of me, but rightfully so. But I haven't, as I was saying before I sidetracked, I haven't really read adult fantasy, watched adult fantasy, so the swearing in this did make me laugh simply because you've got this fantasy setting, and randomly a character will just like say the F word or start saying the S word over and over again, and I sound like a 7-year-old, but I don't want to put people off by swearing. Plus my parents are going to watch this, so, you know, got to be careful. So that did make me laugh, and Henry Cavill's delivery on the swearing is just so funny. It's perfect. Next actor that I'm going to mention is Anya Chaletra. I did try and pronounce her name in the previous video, and I probably got it wrong. It's either Chalotra or Chaletra. I can't remember. But she plays the character of Yennefer of Vanderburg, who is a sorceress who was originally deformed, but went to Aretuza, where wizards are trained, or mages, that's what they're called in here. Where mages are trained, she went for a ritual that involved her reproductive system being removed so that her her physical appearance can be altered permanently, and so that's sort of where she is. A desperate uphill struggle for control and power and satisfaction with her life. First she thought that power and being beautiful would satisfy her, but it didn't, and where her story arc sort of ends, she thinks that having a child will satisfy her, but ultimately, no, it doesn't. So she is a very tragic character, very sad, and there's so much raw emotion that she had to portray for this, and I feel like Anya really hit this on the head. Her performance was so raw and believable, and it tugs at you. It's so brilliant. She was definitely a highlight of the series. Her acting was just astonishing, and I feel like I wouldn't have been as invested in her part and her plotline, despite how fantastic it is, if she hadn't been so passionate and put all that effort into these scenes. So she was amazing. The next main character is played by Freya Allan, who plays the character of Princess Cyrilla of Cintra. Now this is where the positive praise lessens somewhat. Now don't get me wrong, Freya Allan did a great job of playing Ciri, and I feel like she did the best with what she had to work with, but just in my opinion, Ciri's plotline is the weakest of the three because it throws Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri, and I will talk about that more in the dislike section. But on the terms of the acting with Ciri, she did a great job, and I did believe what she was portraying because she plays a tragic character as well of a princess whose entire family and city is invaded and destroyed by a place called Nilfgaard, and so she is, she's mourning and she's angry and sad, and in season 2 she really blows my socks off. I'm still watching season 2, but she's doing really well in that. But even in season 1 she does a great job of portraying the hurt and the anger and the sadness and the sort of determination to move forward. So, Freya Allan did a great job. Now we get into side characters who I just thought were of note. With, of course, now I did do a video about this guy. Admittedly, not a great video, but I did do a video about Jaskier, played by Joey Batey. Now, this guy is in, 3 episodes? But in each one, I had my attention focused on this guy the whole scene he was in, because he is so captivating with his performance. It's so unlike any of the other characters, and yet not out of place, because he plays the character of a bard, he, travelling musician, bit of a swindler, comic relief. He's very funny, and the songs he sings sound amazing, which he performs and does the instrumentals for himself, because Joey Batey is a member of a band with his friend called Madeline Highland. The band's called An Amazing Devil, and I've started listening to it since the last video, and it's good music. It's good music, guys. So it's no surprise that he can definitely play the character. Cast a musician to play the musician, no brainer. But he's so funny and expressive, and I think complemented Henry Cavill's performance of Geralt as a sort of grumpy loner with overly chatty and sort of clingy bard. It was a fantastic performance, and I think he stole the limelight in every scene he was in. Surprisingly, not many people talk about him in their reviews, so I want to cut a section aside just so he gets some recognition, because I thought he was fantastic. Now, the final side character whom I will be mentioning, and who the actress's name, who I have sadly forgotten, I think it's Jodie May. Note here if I'm wrong. Jodie May plays Ciri's grandmother, Queen Calanthe of Cintra, and Calanthe is a great character. She's a very powerful figure and a woman as well, and that sounds bad, but in this fantasy world, I believe I've heard people disliking the portrayal of women in this fantasy world. They are sort of, it's a medieval sort of setting, so they are kind of lower in the class system, and so having Queen Calanthe be the Lioness of Cintra, she is a strong female character in this world where perhaps they have not got as much agency, is fantastic. And especially in season 2, Calanthe does die, but everyone who could have invaded Cintra, once they hear Calanthe is dead, they say, well, I would never have dared take it away from Calanthe. And so you just see how powerful this character was, how threatening she was, how much of a great queen for this jewel of the continent was. But the performance by Jodie May, I hope that's her name, otherwise I'm going to sound really stupid talking about it, was fantastic. She was great at the angry face and the sort of, the being opposing, there's a word for it, a bit challenging facial expression, sort of, and giving off the air of someone who just doesn't care about the etiquette, I guess, the standard that she's meant to follow. She's like, what, screw it, I am me, and it's so great. I really enjoyed her performance. She captivated me in every scene she was in as well. It was just such a great performance. So as a whole, the acting was a real high point for the series. I don't know whether I would have enjoyed it as much as I did and am if the actors weren't all putting in their absolute best in this series. It's fantastic. I'm just going to take a look at my notes again. So next I have put the story. Now this story doesn't really take off in season 1. Now this is more of the setup for season 2 and later on, because it's based on The Last Wish, which is the first book No, it's the first book in the timeline of The Witcher, but it's not the first published, and it's just a collection of short stories of setup. And so this was just setup. There's not a wider story really, minus a few things. But I still really enjoyed how this all came together. There, as I said, there are 3 timelines. There is Yennefer's story, which is just her going through her magical training, becoming beautiful and giving away her ability to bear a child, and then how that leads her to Geralt eventually. And then there's Ciri, just her story of what happens when she flees her country, and then how she meets Geralt at some point. So those are the 2 consistent storylines, but with Geralt, he kind of just doesn't really have a chronological order to his episodes. It's, well, no, that he has no overarching plot line. It's just him going from place to place, sort of getting jobs or reacting to the influences of maybe Jaskier. It's just all him doing stuff with no real link. But I still really enjoyed the story, and despite Geralt's section not really having a larger plot, I did enjoy his episodes the most specific. Well, not his episodes, because there are mixes in each episode, but I enjoyed his segments the most specifically, which I've made a point of writing, the Monster of the Week episodes. Now, there aren't many of these in the series, but Monster of the Week episodes is when the monster hunter does the monster hunting, you know? There are sort of 3 episodes that come into 3, maybe 2 episodes in this. So there is the first one, which is kind of a monster hunt, but not, because it's a girl he's hunting, not a monster, but the girl is arguably a monster. That's a moral dilemma in that. There's an actual monster that is a cursed baby monster, which is really cool, which I will talk about in a minute. There's one with a golden dragon, which is kind of Monster of the Week, but also ties into the larger plotline because Yennefer comes into it. But I enjoyed these episodes the most because it's watching Geralt in his element, and it's more, I don't know, it's just where it really shines in The Witcher being The Witcher. It is meant to be a gory monster hunting premise, and while the greater story is fine and I liked it, I just really enjoyed these moments where we got to just watch The Witcher doing what The Witcher does. Now, out of these 3, I did enjoy the one with the cursed baby thing the most, because it felt the most isolated. It was Geralt goes to palace. Geralt goes to palace to kill cursed baby thing that is killing people. Geralt learns that he could save this baby thing rather than killing it. So then it turns into a survive the night story, which is quite interesting. So instead of killing the monster, which he could have done easily, he has to survive the night in this palace with the monster so that by morning it transforms back because magical ritual and stuff, right? And it was just so tense, the action was great, and the monster, let me just touch on the monster, was such an impeccable design. Now, I'll talk about effects later on in the sort of dislike iffy section, but the design of this monster, the Striga, was fantastic, and mainly because it was practical effects. So it was just a costume and someone in the costume, obviously. So it really looked like a cursed baby thing. It was described by another character as a walking abortion, and it looked like a walking abortion, right? It still had its umbilical cord attached, which was a detail that I was like, oh, how cool. You know, when a monster's on the screen, most people would be like, monster. I was like, that's a cool design, I like that. But, you know, just having the umbilical cord still there, sort of having it sort of twisted and jolting in its movement was really cool. I really liked the design of the monster for that episode. But it also brought out a thing about Geralt that is touched on a lot. It's like one of the characters, Triss, says to him, who is a mage who was working with him, most people would have killed it, but you didn't. Thank you. And that just shows Geralt might be the monster hunter, but he has a moral code. And I will touch on the theme when I talk about what else I like. But it's pretty cool. That was a good episode. So anything else I could talk about with story? It was satisfying. It was really satisfying to see how the stories wrapped up in the end, because there are the 3 plot lines and they all eventually come together. And that was really well done. I thought it was good to see, especially with Geralt and Ciri, since they're led by destiny to find each other. I liked their wrap up, even if I didn't like Ciri's plotline the most. Also with story, I really liked the episode based on The Last Wish, the story from The Last Wish, like the short story it's named after. Because that brought Jaskia, Yennefer, and Geralt together, and it was great to see them all sort of have their plot lines intersect, and the chaos that ensued, the setup for the Yennefer and Geralt's relationship. It was just really well done. I like that. And speaking of their relationship, I have to touch on that. It's not really a major thing in this series. It's in like 2 episodes it happens, but I was really invested. In the first one, basically, Geralt saves Yennefer's life because she's trying to perform a dangerous ritual to get her uterus back. He saves her because she was going to die. They sleep with each other, and then he leaves while she's asleep. And that's sort of the start of their relationship. And then the next one is one with a dragon, and she's looking for another way to get her reproductive system back. And she basically says to him, look, I'm tired of this hit and go. So they've been going around, meeting each other, doing the devil's tango, and then leaving each other for a long time. And she says, look, I don't want to do this anymore. Can we please just be serious? And he's like, sure. So you have this quite emotional moment where it shows a montage of one of the two waking up after they've slept with each other and seeing that the other is gone, and the hurt on their face. But then you get the night that this episode is set in, or no, the morning that is in this episode, and Yennefer wakes up, rolls over, and Geralt's still there. And I was just like, oh, it's so happy. And then they broke up at the end of the episode, and I was like, well, damn, you got me invested for what? And it was emotional, but I liked that. And final thing with story, talking of relationships, apparently Jaskia and Geralt weren't portrayed correctly in this adaptation. So apparently they're more close friends in the book, and people have gone so far as to say that they don't even seem to be friends in this adaptation, and so that makes it bad. However, while they do clearly run each other up the wall, I did feel like they definitely cared about each other. I never doubted that they were friends throughout the whole of the series, but that might just be because I wanted them to be friends, right? But I just felt like, I don't think it was really a problem. They did maybe make them irritate each other a bit more, but that was for comic relief, right? So, I don't know. I liked it. Some people didn't. That's just my opinion. Okay, moving on to the final thing I want to talk about for what I liked, and I liked most of it really, is the themes. So, I can't talk about many themes because it's not my forte, right? But one of the themes that I was able to pick out, well, because it was probably spoon-fed, was Geralt's moral code, and there were 2. There was one about how, it's on the back of this book. 1 minute. I believe it's on the back of this book. No, it's not on the back of this book. God damn. Right, it might be on the back of the other. So I'll read the back, because this encapsulates what I'm trying to say quite well. Geralt of Rivia is a witcher. He uses his legendary power and lifelong training to protect the innocent by hunting the vile fiends that ravage the land. But not all monsters are evil, and not everything fair is good. Right? So that's what I'm trying. That's the theme. It's like he's always quite skeptical about what he's killing. He always likes just making sure that's in there. He likes to know whether it deserves to die, and it's like the thing with the Striga. He didn't kill it, and that was a good theme. It was I liked it because it made it complex. It could have just been like, monster, kill it, but no. Each time it's always like, did it deserve to die? And most of the time he usually spares it, other times he doesn't. But I like that theme. And the other one is about making a choice between the lesser evil or the greater evil, right? So in the first episode in particular, Geralt is asked to either kill a girl, kill a wizard, or do nothing, and they'll kill each other, basically, right? And I've grossly oversimplified that, but that's it. And the wizard and the girl are both encouraging Geralt to pick the lesser evil, kill the other. And Geralt says, evil is still evil. Lesser, middling, greater, it's all the same. And I like that theme, while not being one that necessarily continues through the whole series. I do like that idea that, you know, because I've always thought like the lesser evil, but it's like, but it's still evil, so you sure there isn't another route you could take where everything is avoided altogether? I don't know, but I like that theme. That was good. So that is everything I liked, and I liked the whole series. I have no real complaints, but I just want to touch on the few things that I might not have liked as much, and the only thing that I have written. Right. So there's series plotline. So as I've said, no problems with the acting. The acting was superb. I just feel like the plotline with Siri was the least interesting and most cliche plotline out of them all. It's kind of like she runs away. Her basic character development is her realizing that maybe the world outside of her palace isn't as nice as she thought it was. Don't know what that voice was. And then, that's it really. And then she meets Geralt. But like the stuff that happens in it was interesting. I didn't expect it to happen, but just as far as it goes, it felt quite standard for a fantasy story. So I was a bit like, meh. You know, the other stuff is a wee bit more interesting, but as I said, it's not to do with the acting. So that's just... I'm not going to rant about it because it wasn't that much of a problem, but just series plotline was the weakest out of the three. And then the final thing that I mentioned was I've got one more thing to talk about that I remembered, but the effects were sometimes iffy. Now, this is mainly in an episode with a dragon. The dragon looked fine, but sometimes it looked a bit weird. So, I don't know. I just thought, why does it look so weird compared to the Striga? Maybe it's because they were using CGI and had less time to develop it. I don't know. Just looked a bit iffy. That's fine. Didn't detract from my watch experience because I don't mind it much, but I know some people that I've watched reviews for have been a bit bothered by it. So I thought I'd bring it up. The effects perhaps could be better, although in what I've seen of Season 2, it's not a problem anymore, because when I was watching the first episode of Season 2, I was sitting there with my dad and I went, wow, the production value's gone up here. And it really did it. It gets a lot better in Season 2, but with you know, what they spent on the effects. But, you know, that's a small thing. And the final thing was the villains of this series. Well, semi-villains. The villains in series plotline, the Nilfgaardians. Specifically the wizard Fringilla and a guy with a black feather on his head, whose name I don't know. They seem kind of shallow. Their motivations weren't explored, really. Why they were doing it wasn't really explored either, and it is in Season 2, so that's good. They're fleshed out then, but I would have liked to have known more about them when they were kind of still the villains, because they stopped being the villains, really, in Season 2. But just from there, the villains of the series plotline were perhaps not as good as they could have been, but that's fine, because they weren't really the main focus anyways, especially when they sort of become good guys in Season 2, so, you know, I can forgive that. There was another thing that I thought of, but I've forgotten what it was, and that's annoying, because I'll remember it later, and I'll be like, damn, I should have included that in the video, so let me just try and figure out what I was thinking. No, I can't think of what it was. I don't know what I was going to say. I have no idea, so, oh, come on, I have a feeling it's quite important, and it was a thing that would have been good to talk about, but it's not coming to me. I just have no idea what it was. Yes, I was going to talk about larger things with this series, so, if I were to recommend this to someone, I don't know anyone particularly who I could recommend it to, because I did recommend it to someone who is actually a regular commenter on here called Trying My Best. I recommended it to them, and they'd already watched it, so none of my close friends would really enjoy it, because it's quite gory, right? It's a very gory show. There's quite a lot of nudity and sexual content as well, so it's like, not necessarily, it's rated to 15, so would I recommend it to people my age? Sure, if you can handle gore, and you're okay with nudity, I guess, but I guess fantasy fans who are quite mature would be my recommendation. I wouldn't put an age cap on it because I don't quite believe in those. there is no age cap, it's just the person, right, and whether they can handle it, because making someone wait until they're like 15 to watch something that they could handle when they're 11, it's kind of like, yeah. So, yes, mature fantasy fans, that's where I'd say this kind of lands. So, that's my review of The Witcher. I'm glad this didn't go as poorly as it did last time, so, hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully, if you feel you could watch this show, I have inspired you to watch it, because it's fantastic. And I guess I'm going to rate it out of 10. I would give it a 8.5 out of 10 for Season 1. Season 1, 8.5 out of 10. That's solid. So I was going to give it a 9, but that just feels like very, I don't know, the 9 wasn't sitting well with me, so we're going to give it 8.5, right? And Season 2 is looking to be a 9 or a 10, so that is good. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again next Wednesday, when I will hopefully, fingers crossed, be reviewing Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thrakka, Prophet of the Warg. So, have a good one, y'all. Bye.